start my video here. So hello, my name is Nat Coalson, and thanks so much for joining me. It looks like people are saying they can hear. Okay, good. We're all set then. Hello from Denver, Colorado, my hometown there. Ken Clark, nice to see you. Thank you everybody for joining me. So the program for tonight, we're going to go about 45 minutes, and I'm going to, let me just put my video on here as well. I'm going to be covering, sorry, bear with me. I want to make sure I got all my controls here. This is the first time I've used Zoom for this. So we're going to be talking about still life photography. Now, I understand that a lot of you are spending more time at home these days, and as keen photographers you all are, I'm sure that you are happy to have some projects and some ways to get out the camera and some things to work on. So the idea here is that we're going to go over some creative techniques and some materials and some different approaches that you can play with to make some interesting pictures. So I'm going to be going back and forth between a presentation with some slides, and then also we'll be looking at quite a few pictures in my Lightroom catalog. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again with you, and then we'll start playing the slideshow here. Okay, so sorry, bear with me a second. I've got all these different windows popping up here. Okay, so let's go over briefly what we're going to be covering tonight. So my aim here is that we're going to be taking some positive action in this, somewhat difficult situation. During this time where you might be otherwise doing other things, I think it's important that we can, turn our attention to some things that we enjoy and that we can find some creative outlet. I'm hoping that tonight I can give you some new ways of thinking. Now, I'm a big believer that photography really is all about seeing, and seeing, of course, is mainly about thinking and how you approach your work. My aim also is that you would improve some skills, especially where it comes to your visual abilities as well as your design skills. We're going to be trying to consistently develop a personal vision and style. And in the end, the whole point to this is to be making a higher percentage of pictures that you're happy with. Okay, so sorry, apologies if that wasn't sharing the screen. I realize now that there was another button to press. It's amazing the number of buttons that are in front of me at this moment. Okay, so we're going to be covering creative photography, and we're going to talk about what that means, different mindsets, points of view, and ways of working. I'm definitely going to spend a few minutes talking about some essentials of photographic design. The big question, of course, is why still life? And I'll explain this a little bit more on another slide, but still life is a fantastic way to develop your design skills and work with a lot of different objects and materials. Developing your vision, and we'll talk about some key techniques. I'll introduce you to what I consider the important tools that you'll be using as a photographer. And of course, we want to be creating some new ideas. So I'll give you some tips on that. And then working on series. I really believe that working in series is a crucial aspect of developing your work. So let's jump briefly back to this this picture that I used on the title slide. And the reason I chose this, now I'll be the first to admit, this isn't going to win any competition awards or anything for its composition, etc. But I included this because going back quite a number of years, this was one of the first pictures that really got me on my current path. Now, maybe for those of you who don't know me, a little bit of background might be helpful. I've been running my fine art photography business now for about 20 years. And prior to that, I worked as a graphic designer for nearly 10, 15 years. So the graphic aspect is really key in my work. And from the outset, when I started my fine art photography business, the idea was to produce pictures, as beautiful interior wall decor. So going back to the idea of graphics and especially abstraction, which you'll see is a heavy influence in my work. Over the years, I've practiced a lot of different kinds of photography and done quite a lot of commercial work as well. These days, I'm doing pretty much exclusively fine art and selling it through my gallery here in England. So, but this picture again was kind of a jumping off point for me. I was just playing around with a new camera actually, and had some glassware in the kitchen, and this is a decanter for wine, and I just thought, what would it look like if I filled it halfway up with water? And as you can see, some of the effects, the translucent and transparent effects are really quite striking. And this is the kind of scene or situation where you could potentially make a lot of different kinds of pictures out of this. You zoom in a little bit tighter, different framing, different cropping, and you can really make a lot of different things happen. Now this is an example that caught my eye just yesterday, actually. As I was looking through this glass jar in the window of our house, I was really struck by the refractive patterns of the glass and the cotton buds inside. So the idea here really, and one of the main things I really want to emphasize, is that quite literally you can find the opportunities for interesting pictures really anywhere. And so I would encourage you to really be keeping your eyes open even when you're spending time at home, and be looking for interesting little vignettes, as I call them, these tight little compositions that really can be quite striking when you get in a little bit tighter. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what is creative photography. Now, I got to at least, clear one point here a little bit, that photography in and of itself is not necessarily a creative act. I mean, if you think about the idea of picking up a camera or a smartphone and pointing it at something and pressing the shutter button, that's not really creative. So the question is, what is creativity in photography? Well, in my view, the main thing in applying creativity has got to be expression, right? That you're expressing something that is important to you. When I'm looking at your photographs, I really want to know, how you see the world. So this reflects your choices and your decisions, obviously. And the more careful and conscientious that you become about the choices that you're making in your photography, the stronger your pictures will be. Creative photography really does benefit from having goals and a process, right? So we're trying to achieve something specific, and you want to have a sequence of steps that will get you there. I mean, in the end, what we're looking for is a result that you're happy with. Creative photography then, of course, also explores new ways of seeing and thinking about the world. And I think a lot of you might agree with me that being a photographer is one of these things that connects us really intensely to the world around us, especially if you take the time to let it. So before we move on to the next slide, I'll just talk for a minute about this picture. A couple of years ago, my wife Ruth and I were in Greece with some friends, and we were sitting on the balcony of the hotel room, and I noticed this little plastic tub, just a little like a Tupperware kind of container. And it really caught my attention, mainly because of the color. And so I quite simply just turned the tub over on its top against the decking and snapped a few pictures with my phone. Now, I would encourage you that if you have a smartphone with a decent camera on it, that you can really use that very much like a scratch pad. And it's a good way to practice different ideas and really explore different alternative venues. We're looking at the picture here just to the right of this slide. This is the plastic tub I'm talking about. I'll show you a bigger version of it in a minute. So let's go briefly over approaches to photography. You know, on one hand, we have the idea of seeking and finding opportunities. And I know a lot of photographers work this way, going out into the world, looking for things to take pictures of. Well, there's another way to approach this, and that is actually setting up pictures. And this is where still life can really come in. Now, still life could be either photographing something that you have found and encounter, certainly, or you can actually construct pictures. And that's one of the things that we're going to go over tonight. So if you think about these different approaches to photography, then you've got, on one hand, you've got street photography, you know, where maybe you're roaming around looking for interesting situations and snapping pictures as you go. Landscape is very much like this as well, right? And you know, you sort of find what you find when you get there. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, still life and maybe studio portraiture, for example, are very much sort of set up kind of situations. So what we're really talking about here is this spectrum of control, where on one end you have luck, essentially. You're hoping that you'll find something to take a picture of, and when you do, you frame it up and press the shutter. On the other end of the spectrum, of course, you have the complete engineering approach, where you're really constructing a picture. So what some of the techniques I'm going to talk about in a minute, it was still life, have to do with, you know, setting up pictures. In all cases, though, whether you're out and about looking around for pictures or whether you're setting them up, you can use these experiences to make stronger and better photographs. So the key here, again, as I said at the outset, you know, good photography is really about how well you can think about what you're doing. So you want to be very aware of what mode you're operating in. And when you're in a reactive mode, you're seeing something and responding, right? You're grabbing shots sort of as you go. A productive mode might be thought of as taking some more direct direction or influencing the situation. And when you're fully in a creative mode, you're really pre-visualizing pictures. You're imagining what's possible. You're seeing with your mind's eye the kinds of pictures you can make, and then, as necessary, going about and constructing them. Now, this could come down to adjusting the lighting or changing the staging of the setup as well. This all takes us into the realm of what we would call photographic design, right? Where you are starting with a set of goals, which then this reflects your intent. Now, intent is highlighted here because your intention as a photographer is absolutely the most important tool that you have at your disposal. You need to be really careful to understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Once you know what your intention is, then you set about these steps. You know, you're going through process, trying to execute something specific, which brings you to the results. And then ultimately you need to evaluate these results to make sure that they're in line with your goals. And then you repeat the process. Okay. So at this point, then I'm going to switch over and we're going to look at some pictures to help illustrate some of these approaches that I'm talking about. So I'm going to try and we'll start with a few pictures from Italy. Now, these pictures were taken on different trips, but all in Italy over the last probably 10 years or so. Now, this is what I would consider kind of a classic still life sort of setup. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a drink. So with this image, I'm using natural window light. And this is a setup that literally, I just found it this way, right? I didn't set it up like this. I just sort of came across it and there it was. And really, it was just a matter of trying to find the right composition by moving around the camera and seeing what was possible. Adjusting the exposure, of course. This actually was shot on a tripod because the light was low enough that I couldn't really get sharp enough shots shooting handheld. Okay, so this is a very traditional kind of classic still life approach. Same here, although this has been converted to monochrome. This is some found objects in a cellar underneath a building in Italy. Sorry, don't ask me why there was a trumpet with a wine bottle down there, but when you encounter these kinds of things, you want to have some fun with it. So again, a very traditional kind of approach to still life. Now this is still life as well, but this is a lot more abstract. This is quite literally just a curtain in front of a window, right? I mean, it couldn't be simpler. But the idea here is that we're using the framing of the camera to try and make a compelling image, right? And this is all about the soft pastel hues, the textures, and this very subtle grid pattern. So between these three approaches of kind of very straightforward still life, some monochrome conversion, and then something more to abstraction, you really do have a lot to work with, even within a confined area. So the question then, begs, why still life for these types of techniques? The idea that I'm trying to present here is that when you're working with still life, especially when you're at home, you're in an environment that you have seen a lot of times, right? I mean, and you might be looking around your room now thinking that it's all very familiar and it's not very exciting or interesting. Well, that sometimes can present the best opportunities for building your skills because it forces you to take a new look at familiar scenes and situations. So I really would encourage you to embrace the idea of doing photography and making pictures in places even that you feel are quite sort of boring or that you're very used to. One of the best benefits of building your skills with design and being able to see things with fresh eyes is that once you get into situations where there's a whole lot more opportunity and things are new and fresh and happening very quickly, these dynamic situations, and you've built your skills and you're able to really maximize and take advantage of those opportunities. Keep in mind here that creativity always really means coming up with new approaches, right? You're trying to do things differently than you have done before, especially when you're dealing with elements, in a known situation. Bear with me a second. Just want to check where I'm at here. Okay, so with our approaches to still life photography, then you want to approach this really starting thinking about what is the finished picture really going to look like. And this is where we talk about pre-visualization. You're quite literally imagining the picture in your mind's eye, even as you're working with the scene or the subject matter. Now, there's quite a few styles and genres that can be applied to still life, right? Now, I've shown you a few abstractions. Obviously, for botanical pictures, flowers and plants and things are real popular subject matter for still life. Most of us have these types of things in the house. Architecture is also a great source for still life, close-ups, and I'll show you some examples of that in just a second. Now, when you're thinking in terms of this finished picture, you can be thinking in terms of design and layout and graphics and pure visual elements, or you really can be thinking about what is the meaning, the concept, and the message to this picture, right? So, I mean, we're kind of trying to make a distinction between something that's purely visual, the visual structures involved, how does the picture actually present, what is somebody looking at, how does their eye move around the frame. This is all design. But when you're driving the picture based on content, that's a little bit more conceptual, right? Are you trying to say something or convey a message? By practicing all these skills, the idea of constructing a strong image, sort of keeping it distinctly separate from the idea of communication, it helps you build stronger pictures because you're addressing both the design aspect in terms of the strength of the image itself, and also dealing with the underlying conceptual meanings. So here's some ideas of things that you can play with. And after looking at this list, then we're going to jump over and look at some example pictures. So objects, elements, and materials, right? I showed you the picture, admittedly a little bit of a small picture of the plastic container. Now, plastic containers from your kitchen can really make some incredibly minimalist very sophisticated, clean looking abstracts. Anything really made out of plastic, other objects, toys and things like that can make a really good still life subject matter. Things around your kitchen really can go a long way. Now I've got a few little materials here to the side, and I'm gonna show you some of the pictures. So a simple sheet of foil. Now you all probably have this in your house, and you can imagine how many different ways that this might be used in a still life sort of a setup. You can get really tight shots. Apologies, during this session, we won't be doing any actual shooting. Maybe in the next session we can do that. But I'm going to show you sort of the setups and then show you the results. And maybe in future we can actually go through an entire sequence of shooting together. Back to the materials, things like glass and foil. I've got this paperweight that I found. I'll try and hold it up to the camera. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but paperweights like this and glass objects, you know, especially when you use a macro lens or very close focal length and a tight magnification, really can create a lot of amazing still life subjects. I've got a couple of sheets of some colored acetate that I bought. I think I just got these on Amazon. You can get these in office supply stores. They're like for presentations and for, you know, divider materials. But these types of things, you can either shoot through them or you can use them to colorize the light, right? So all these materials really can go a long way towards creating really interesting constructions. Here's a dried dead rose that I've been saving for a long time. Getting some chats coming through here. Okay, I'm getting some messages that the screen isn't being shared. Bear with me a second here. Let me start the screen sharing again. Hopefully it hasn't been like that for too long. Okay, can you see my screen now? Can somebody, okay, got the screen back again. No idea why it just quit. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, so back to the slideshow here. Let me just check the chats here. Okay, good. Yeah, sorry about that. New technology for me. So anyway, these a dried flower. Now, again, some of this stuff is going to be the most interesting when you've got a macro lens and you can get really tight in on this stuff. But the idea here is that by combining these different materials, then you can create little staged still life sort of setups, right? So continuing with the objects and materials, right? You've got stairs, windows, and ceilings. We're talking about sort of angles and views around your house. Okay, I got a says slideshow is still showing. Can everybody see my screen? Can somebody just type, please, that you can actually see my screen? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, I'm going to restart my video now. Sorry about this, folks. Not really sure what's going on. Okay, how about me? Can you see me now? I've started the camera again. Okay, I'm getting text that says that you cannot see me. Bear with me a second here. I keep stopping and starting the video. Okay, how about now? Can you see me now? Okay, can you see me now? Now you can see me. Okay, it says people need to set their screens to see both. Okay, so apparently you will be able to see both the screen, the screen and my video. If you can configure your window that way, you should be able to get the slides in one area and the video on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen again, and it should still continue the video. Okay, do you have the screen and the video now? Okay. Okay, somebody, thanks Joyce. Somebody says when the slideshow is on, people need to hit the top right-hand small box, which allows for speaker view as well. Okay, great. Okay, so we've got, we've looked at some objects and materials. So sorry for the little bit of a diversion there. I'm going to carry on here. So we're going to go and look at some pictures, and I'll give you some examples. So let's start with some of the, let's make sure that everybody needs to be able to see this now. Everybody can see my screen? Let's start with some architecture. You know, I showed you the example of some of my early, decanter. So here is another image that, again, it's not one of my best of all time, but it got me thinking. And this is quite literally just a sliver of light on the ceiling of my house. Okay, so the idea here is that you can create interesting compositions pretty much anywhere. Here is a curtain in a hotel room. It's been converted to monochrome. Let's see, I've actually got quite a lot of pictures of curtains. Here's a larger view of that, of the one that we looked at earlier. This is a step leading into a building in Seville, Spain. And this, you know, is quite abstract, but still it, you know, would be considered a still life because it's not landscape, it's not sports, it's not moving subject matter. This is a close-up of some colored tiles inside a music hall in Seville. And this is natural color. This is really how it looked when I, you know, originally saw it and shot it. And then, I mean, I quite like it in color, but here actually is what it looks like when it's been converted to monochrome and rotated 90 degrees. So it makes it very abstract. So we're starting with, you know, real life raw materials and then working our way gradually to something much more abstract. Working with the architecture theme again. Here's a close-up of a wall with some light streaking across it. Again, the whole point is that these kind of pictures are everywhere all the time. It really just takes being able to see them and identify them. Here's a set of pictures that I made in a friend's house in Canada, and sitting out on their balcony one day, just realized how interesting these very hard graphics look, these solid fields of color, and just created a little series, you know, playing with different compositions, rotating the camera different ways, you know, and again, these kinds of pictures literally are everywhere. So in terms of looking around your house, you know, you've got light coming in through windows, you know, that can really make quite dramatic patterns and effects, right? I mean, as long as you stay aware to this kind of stuff. I mean, here's an iPhone picture of a close-up of the blinds in our front room, right? So pictures are everywhere. Here's another little set of ceiling pictures. You know, you can tell I really love my ceilings. But the idea here, if you look at, this is the first one in the series, and I really liked sort of the shapes and the graphic elements and the soft pastel hues, but getting it a little bit more minimal and seeing the way that the light interacts. The blue is light coming in from a window, and the yellow is more from a lamp. right? And there is, you know, just pure color fields, right? So these kinds of pictures, again, I guarantee that you can find these inside your house anytime, right? So that's some of the architectural kind of stuff. What about some other materials? So I mentioned about this, this foil. So here I have, if you can still see the video, I'm hoping you can still see the screen, the camera. This piece of glass is fused glass that I made myself, right? And it's just some colored strips of glass that I've melted and fused together. And this is a standard piece of foil, okay? So what I've done is just put on my macro lens. Now this is a true 1-to-1 macro, and just start getting in really tight on it, right? And so for some of these, I'll generally start with shooting handheld, just so I get, you know, quite a bit of fluid movement, and trying different compositions, and trying it with some polarization on and off, right? If you don't have a polarizer, I definitely recommend getting one, especially when you're working with reflective surfaces, right? And gradually getting in tighter and tighter and finding the essence of the thing, right? So in my view, I mean, this is a work in progress, this series. I mean, and it's still early days yet. I've only made this set of pictures so far, but I really feel like that there's something here. And it's going to take some time, you know, to kind of work through what are all the opportunities here. But I really, you know, want to keep, you know, pursuing the abstraction, and, you know, getting in tighter and tighter to create interesting shots, especially because this is a very small area. And when we blow it up big on a print, it can be, you know, have a lot of real impact. So here's one that shows a lot of the reflections in the glass, right? So what other materials? You know, ICM, intentional camera movement. These all of these pictures were made indoors. Right, this is reflections on Christmas tree ornaments and Christmas tree lights. This I sold as a big print to a hotel here in the UK. This is a close-up of a wall in an old stately home using intentional camera movement. This is also a wall with some curtains, intentional camera movement. So practicing ICM, if you like these kinds of pictures, this is certainly something you can do indoors. This is an ongoing series of intentional camera movement that I'm working on using doorknobs, right? So you get some really interesting different effects by moving the camera during the exposure. What else do we have? Some different stage setups here. So close-ups of patterns and textures are always really interesting. This is very hard, direct sunlight on some paper on the outside of an old building. This is a Photoshop composite. I want to mention about bowls of potpourri and sort of dried decorative materials that you see. This is where I just shot this little ball of twine thing, and then had another picture that I took of a wall in an old building and just used Photoshop to make a composite image. Skipping around a little bit here, here's that Tupperware, right? And, you know, quite literally, it's a plastic dish on a deck. But, you know, to me, this represents a real potential, you know, jumping off point to create a set of images that is quite interesting and compelling. Here's a close-up of some ice in a glass of Aperol Spritz. This was made with my phone camera with Lightroom Mobile. Ice is a really great subject matter for all kinds of different still life. Okay, so I hope that gives you some ideas of different types of results that you can get with materials. I'm going to jump back into this Lightroom presentation in just a second, but let's continue on through the slideshow here. So we want to always be working on being able to see like the camera. You've probably noticed, all of you experienced photographers, that sometimes you see something and you think it's going to make a good picture, and then you make a few frames and you realize it's not working out. I have some tips for you that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. So one really strong way to start seeing like the camera is to close one eye, or just cover your eye with your hand, and then slightly squint the other eye. By doing this, you're taking out your depth perception from your two eyes and seeing more like a camera lens. And by squinting the other eye, you actually are reducing the contrast in the scene. So a basic rule of thumb is, if you think you see something that looks interesting, or you're framing up a shot, if you close one eye and kind of squint the other eye that's still open, if it doesn't still look just as interesting, then you don't really have a picture there, right? And it's best just to move on. Going beyond the obvious, it's quite easy for anyone to make a nice shot of, say, a sunset over the beach, or a beautiful alpine landscape, right? I mean, these are the obvious pictures that just jump out at you. But you want to be working towards making pictures that only you could make, right? That this is how you develop your own vision and style, by going beyond the obvious and looking for images where other people might miss them. So some essential techniques for doing this then. One thing, if you're not doing this already, really I want to encourage you to live your life as a photographer by superimposing an imaginary frame on everything that you see. I mean, literally, as you're going about your daily life, especially now that we're in our homes, as you look around your environment, especially closing one eye, I mean, you might get some weird looks, I'll warn you, but if you can spot photographs in your immediate environment and just be always practicing, where is a shot, I guarantee you'll find some that you did not notice before. So here's an exercise that I'm going to explain in just a minute. I've got a set of exercises to share with you, but you want to understand when you're working in sort of a quick reactive mode versus something that's a bit more strategic and careful and a little bit more in depth, right? And it's okay to work in both modes, but it's important to differentiate when you're in that reactive mode versus when you're applying a little bit more strategy to your work. Shooting handheld versus on a tripod can really help this as well. I mentioned about how with my macro shots, I would maybe start off shooting handheld just so I can have some freedom of movement. But once I think I know what is the framing that I want, I found my shot, I'll very often put it on the tripod so I can drop my ISO right down, use longer shutter speeds if I need to, use small apertures to get the depth of field that I want. So you want to practice working in both of these modes. I'm going to really encourage you also to do some writing. And if you don't already have a dedicated notebook just for your photography, I would really suggest that keeping some notes and jotting down your ideas, your questions, ideas for projects, especially once you think maybe that you have the seed of a concept, you really want to take some time to flesh that out, and keeping a journal is the best way to do that. So looking through our toolbox, some of the things that we have at our disposal here, obviously the subject matter is going to be, your first thing that you're considering. Is it a natural thing that you found, or have you staged it, right? Are you taking an object and setting it in a background? Are you setting up little arrangements of things, or are you hunting around for pictures? And really, you want to do both, but you want to be clear about which mindset that you're in, right? And what you're trying to do with the subject. The use of light and shadow obviously could take many, many more webinar sessions to look at, but you want to practice reading the light and how the appearance or the effect of shadows is influencing your pictures, and decide whether or not you want to manipulate the light or not. I generally don't use artificial light. I might use modifiers like a diffuser or a polarizing filter. Certainly affects the way that the image looks. I like to work with light as I find it, but with still life especially, there's a lot to be said for setting up the lighting as well, or at least manipulating it to get the effect that you want. Another key creative tool you have is your, quite literally, the zoom or magnification, right? And so using different lenses, especially with a still life setup that's sort of, close to you, using different lenses can create very different effects in the way that the image looks, which also ties into your perspective and your point of view, right? I mean, you can get up high, down low, go around the side and the back of things. And sometimes it's easy to forget these different ways of working. Using a shallow depth of field on some of the pictures. Generally with my still life, especially with the more abstract work, I generally like to have everything sharp and uniformly in focus, but that's, totally your creative call. Some people really like that soft, shallow depth of field. And with still life, there, is a really, a lovely effect that you can get with a softer background to help the foreground object really stand out. In-camera effects, obviously, like intentional camera movement to create abstraction. And then, of course, you have all of the post-processing stuff. I know I've worked with many of you on editing in Lightroom and Photoshop and so forth. And that is an important part of finishing the picture. But mainly what we're talking about here is camera work and, interacting with your environment and getting in this mindset where you're creating pictures by imagining what could be possible. So in terms of generating new ideas for pictures, especially these days where we're sort of stuck with some limited mobility, there's nothing wrong with just copying things that you've seen. If you like it, if you see pictures, of mine today, or if you, are on a photo sharing website or Facebook or wherever, and you see images that you think that you could replicate, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing that as a way of learning and exploring and developing ideas. Obviously, I'm not encouraging you to just, go out copying everybody's stuff. But sometimes that process of reverse engineering really can help you build some great skills of your own, right? So don't be a copycat, but work with, what you're given. Doing wordplay and association and drawing out sketches in your journal really can help you come up with brand new ideas for different kinds of pictures. And then, of course, there's pure imagination where you can just sit with your eyes closed and come up with pictures that you want to take, literally in your mind, and then work about, setting those up. In all of this, the strongest advice that I can leave you with is that you want to be thinking in terms of series, right? That you want to not just be making individual pictures, as strong as they might be, that don't have any connection to one another. I mean, if you can adopt this mindset of working in series and bodies of work and projects, each of those pictures is bound to continue to get better and better as you find the common threads and the elements, that really what mean the most to you. And this gets back to the expression as well. How to know when it's a strong concept. This is one of the things that I work a lot with people in one-to-one mentoring and coaching in photography, and identifying what are projects really worth working on. And seeing those threads of how things tie together and concepts that can link. When to know you've reached a pivot point, and you might start off making a series of pictures and realize that the strongest thing you can do from those pictures is actually go in a different direction, and that is an intensely creative act. And that's one of the most rewarding parts of photography, is to find those discoveries along the way. So here's some creative exercises. We're on kind of the home stretch here. So I'm going to leave you with some creative exercises. I'll go over these briefly, but I'll also give you a link. You can download a PDF of these. So the first one is sit with your eyes closed in a peaceful place where you can sit undisturbed for about 5 minutes. 10 minutes is even better. And during this time, just concentrate on all of your other senses, your smell and your hearing, and even your taste and your touch, how your body feels. When you open your eyes, you will see things differently. And I'll leave it to you to experience that in your own way. But be ready to take some pictures or make a few notes after sitting with your eyes closed, because reducing your sight for a while and then having it come back really helps you, again, see things with fresh eyes. A great exercise that I learned from a series of books by a guy called Freeman Patterson is to practice taking pictures within a fixed boundary area, right? So you might say something that's 2 meters or somewhere around 5 or 6 feet in diameter. Practice making 25 or 30 pictures just in that area. And I mean, you'll find that it really increases your skills at seeing what's possible. Working like a cinematographer. This is one we do a lot in my workshops, where you start with a very wide establishing shot where you get kind of the whole thing in and gradually get tighter and tighter. This is one of the things that I'm doing with the macro shots with the glass and the foil, right? Starting with something big and then seeing how, as I get tighter and tighter, how the compositions become stronger. I mentioned about working fast and then working slow. A really good exercise is to shoot quick and responsively and reactively for 5 or 10 minutes, and then take a quick break, take a breath, reset yourself, and then for the next 5 or 10 minutes, really work very, very slowly. Maybe only take one picture, but take your time really seeing where the possible shots are. This is one I call a single motif. I'm going to jump back and show you an example of this. So a single motif is a design theme, an element, right? It could be circles, it could be a color, it could be certain textures, or a conceptual thing as well. So here's a set of pictures that I made in Seattle using the theme of circles, right? So over a period of about 45 minutes or an hour, I thought, I'm just going to make a bunch of pictures of circles, right? And so I just went around and shot things that had circles. Now, by doing this, what you're doing is training your eye to identify the motif, right? And in this case, the motif is a shape, but it doesn't have to be a shape, right? The idea is that you set yourself a goal or decide your motif, and then take 20, 30 pictures, do a series just of that theme. Okay, so that's my circles motif, but you can come up with any kind of different subject matter for that. So here is the download link. So it's a bit.ly, bit.ly. And this link is actually an abbreviation for Photographic Design Workshop 5 Exercises, PDW5EXC. Now, I should also tell you that I'm happy to share this set of slides with you if you can't write this link down now. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to watch it again later if you like. So download this set of exercises. Here's a quick bonus one, again from Freeman Patterson. And this I call the well-worn path. Well, where maybe first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up, if you've got your camera handy, take pictures just, walking from your bed to the bathroom, or, in the hallway between the kitchen and the living room. Really find a place that you're very familiar with, that you've seen a million times, and you think there couldn't possibly be pictures there. I guarantee there are interesting pictures there. And if you force yourself to have a bit of discipline to really explore what's possible, you'll start seeing pictures that you never noticed before. So here's some next steps. Start a journal. Really just keep a little notebook with you and write down your ideas. Obviously, we're trying to have fun here with our photography. So you got to play without, any fear of failure. It's all a process, right? And if the results don't come the way that you want or that you expect right away, you just keep doing it and doing it. And you got to enjoy what you're doing. So maybe a side note to this is that if you're not having fun with whatever it is that you're shooting, shoot something else, right? There's no point in working on something that you don't love. you really want to get your head around this project mentality and this way of looking at working in series, and have a concept or a theme or a subject that you're working on over potentially a long period of time. Now here's the fun bit here. After today's webinar, I'm inviting all of you to email me pictures or send them by Dropbox or WeTransfer, whatever. Get me some images, and I'm going to be happy to provide some critique and some review of your pictures. But also, everybody who sends them to me, I'm going to look through them all and pick my favorites. And for one lucky winner, I'll make a fine art print, and I'll put it in a frame and hang it in our gallery here in England. So definitely send me some pictures based on what we've covered today. Here's my gallery email, just nat@fotique.uk. Obviously, since most of you know me, I'm pretty easy to find online. Get in touch with me, with any questions. As you know, I do quite a lot of one-to-one mentoring and coaching. I also have a series of online courses I'll be launching over the next couple of months at Photographic Design Workshop. The first one there is going to be a full comprehensive course on photographic design. And then, of course, if you haven't seen the gallery website lately, check out what we're doing there. So that brings us to the end. I will be happy to answer questions directly by email. So feel free to send me questions. I also do have a Q&A that's left running here that I can refer back to later, but I want to keep this conversation going. I would love to hear from you, so let me know how it all goes. Good luck. Have a great time.